record now.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Welcome everyone to the May 31st, 2024 Hindu Chaplaincy Resource Center Speaker Series. It is my distinct honor to welcome Mr. Gaurav Rastogi as our presenter today. He is an entrepreneur with 25 years of experience in the executive realm. As a professional, he's led large companies, executive roles, and founded and sold an AI startup. Gauravji's latest venture, Extras Works, creates tools to work with clarity, joy, and energy. They combine spiritual techniques, habit building, and workplace technology for professionals. He holds an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, India's #1 program, and a mechanical engineering undergraduate degree from Delhi Technological University. He has written 3 business books, most recently Global Business in the Age of Destruction and Distraction, published by Oxford University Press in 2022. Gauravji is a board member and the dean at Hindu Spiritual Care Institute, a unique program for teaching spiritual care and chaplaincy. He is a dhyana meditation and yoga teacher, ERYT 500, and has taught in Silicon Valley for over 10 years. He's frequently invited to speak at events and conferences on the practices and philosophy of yoga and Hinduism. He also served on the Interreligious Chaplaincy Advisory Board at the Graduate Theological Union and the Advisory Committee at the Hindu American Foundation. Please join me in welcoming Gauravji to take the stage. Welcome,
Namaskar. Thank you,
Gauravji.
Zakarji.
Namaskar.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to speak, and it's an honor to be here. And it's a joy to discuss this topic that we've been talking about ever since we started HSCI, but it's become more mature as a topic. And I thought this is the one I thought might be interesting to the audience today and anyone who's watching it online later. Do you mind if we begin with the opening prayers?
Please do.
Okay, just one second. Just one second. Zachary G, would you mind sending the invite over to Kailash Ji? All right, you can do that. All right. I'm going to begin with the opening prayers. Please sit comfortably, sitting in any comfortable posture. If you're sitting on a chair, please make sure you have full foot contact on the floor below. The balls and the heels of the feet are touching the floor, and you can let your feet rest. Let your legs rest. You're sitting upright with the back straight. The back, neck, and head are in a straight line. The back is straight but not stiff. The eyes are gently closed. The expression on the face is relaxed. Let the tongue become heavy and fall into the mouth. Let the relaxation in the tongue travel all the way to the back of the throat, into the chest, into the belly. Now breathe in and out of the belly, exhaling from the belly and also inhaling into the belly. Progressively begin to relax more and more. The back is straight but not stiff. The eyes are gently closed. Breathing into the belly, let the belly expand. And as you exhale, simply let go. Let go of your thoughts. Let go of your preoccupations. Like weather balloons or like helium balloons that you let go, they float away. Just let the thoughts go away, float away. Let go of your thoughts. Let go of your preoccupations. Let everything go. Breathing into the belly, let the belly expand. Breathing out, simply let go. Bring your palms together in Namaskar Mudra, pressing the palms together gently, touching the fingers together gently. Gently touch the back of the thumbs into the chest. Hold it right here and bring your attention to the hollow space between the palms. Paying attention to any vibration, any sensation that you experience here. We're going to chant Om 3 times and then the opening prayer, Sahanavavatu. Exhale completely. Take a deep breath. Inhale. Oh. Inhale and chant. Oh. Inhale and chant. Oh. Now inhale and chant the words. Sahana bhavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahe, tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Take your arms behind you, grab your right wrist with your left hand and breathing in, stretch. Breathing out, bend forward in a deep sense of surrender. Come back up, breathing in, release your hands, rub your palms together to generate some heat, and gently cup your eyeballs to transfer that heat. And then blink your eyes open as you pull your palms back, like an open book. Namaskar and welcome back. I'm going to begin this talk all the way back into before recorded history, and then we'll bring our way into today and into the future. But first, let's take a look at today and what's going on. The world is in extreme flux. There is a lot of change and churn and disruption that is underway in the world as we know it. Technology, which is forever evolving, is now evolving at a rate faster than we can comprehend individually. Every week, there's a new technological innovation, and that innovation percolates into the society and creates more disturbance, more eddies in the flow of time itself. And that creates a lot of uncertainty. And we're now at a place where the world seemed to make sense briefly for some time, maybe in the past, but now it is virtually incomprehensible. It's hard to understand what's going on, what's going to happen, and what is my place in the world? How am I to deal with everything that's going on in the world? And while these might look like momentous historic times, if you look at the broad sweep of history, well, this is more of the same because ages have changed in the past. There have been Bronze Ages, Ice Ages, Iron Ages, Stone Ages, and who knows what other ages prior to that that have been around. So a lot of change that humanity has observed over the hundreds of thousands of years that we've been around. And those are etched into our memory. Some of those are etched into our DNA and the expression of our genes. And a lot of that is expressed in civilizational culture because life itself is too short for us to individually acquire all the knowledge that we need to understand the world and to make sense of it, or to even communicate it to somebody else. There's just a lot going on. So the world as we experience it today is in extreme flux. And for the next decade or two, will continue to be in this state of flux and change. But as a species, we have been through these times before, where we've been through some sort of narrow pass where life was tough, or through periods of great change where the entire course of history has seemed to change. And those thousands of years later are recorded into some sort of historic narrative, maybe the great flood or the great drought or the whatever else and so on. So why are we beginning with that? We're beginning with that because being a being a close observer of nature and time is very important to understand the rhythms of nature, to understand how things work, and to try to make sense of all of these, and then figure out what am I to do? What am I here to do? As a species, genetically, we were very close to the great apes. Certainly the weaker of the great apes, one of the weakest of the apes, possibly, but certainly doing rather well for ourselves. Thank you very much. So this capacity to observe, to plan, to memorize, to transmit, this sets us apart as a more successful species because we're able to acquire, to see things, understand things, communicate those things, and let those memories travel through generations in order for them to make sense. Otherwise, physically, biologically, we're just an ape species, and that's just that. Okay, so what are the three afflictions and why should we care about them? Um, I'm going to begin all the way back and look at the Rig Veda. Rig Veda, of course, is some of the earliest poems that we have recorded from human sort of memory. And some of the earliest poems were not poems about the nature of God or anything. They were poems observing the existence of patterns in the world as it is. That existence of patterns was a source of great mystery. Seasons would come and go. The agricultural crop would come and go. Animals would have offspring and the next offspring and so on and so forth. And this repetitive pattern that can be seen in nature everywhere is a source of much interest and observation in the Rig Veda, because you can see that there is some truth to it. There is some reality underlying this repeating pattern. And they said, what causes this order, that this seeming order that we see? What must be the cause of that order? And how do we trace it back? And they wonder if there is a creator. They don't conclude in that, but they certainly wonder about that. But this act of observing, this act of noting, this act of correlating, that is the foundation upon which today's talk is built. Because this act predates us by tens of thousands of years. So now let me talk about the three afflictions. When something bad happens to someone, that something bad can be caused by any number of reasons. Someone got laid off their job. Why did they get laid off? Well, they got laid off, and you can look up a chain of causation, which might be the company is reducing their workforce. Why is the company reducing their workforce? Because the industry is changing. Why is the industry changing? Well, new technology is coming in, or new players are coming in, or globalization. Why is that happening? You keep asking this series of whys, and you're now going to begin to understand what's going on. What is this web of interconnection of things? So when bad things or good things or any things happen to people, in the Hindu tradition, we think of them as the three afflictions, the Trayatapa. And those three afflictions are in terms of trying to figure out what might be the proximate cause for whatever is going on with me. The first and the highest order, this is outside of me, are things that are situational or superhuman. If someone's driving on the road, they're doing fine, and a truck comes in and hits them, T-bones them, right? They're not at fault. They couldn't have seen it coming, and they couldn't have avoided it. It just happened. And so these are situational or superhuman. There's a drought or global warming, or there's something that's going on that's outside our control. That's something that would be considered outside of the individual's sphere of control. And those are things that we call adidavik, things that are the result of external universal energies that are floating around, situational or superhuman. Then there are things that are physical or natural, that are caused in the physical body itself, which might be, if someone fell down and broke their bone, well, that's the falling down is an external factor, but the breaking the bone is inside. And so what's happening in the physical body and might be caused by the movement of the physical, or like movement of energies and everything in the physical body. That's the second part. And the third is the mind itself, the body, mind, and spirit, the latter two parts here, where people just go through things. Externally, things might be fine, but internally, things are not fine, or vice versa. So the impact on the mind and the psyche, that would be adhyatmic problems, which is a sense of suffering that people experience. So when bad things happen to people, or the afflictions that happen to people, you can broadly categorize them into three of these categories, whether it's happening inside me, is inside me in a non-physical sense, or inside me in a physical sense, or something that's outside of me and outside my sphere of control. And now we can begin to look at what might be possible ways of addressing some of these issues. The Indian society, and we talk about this when we do the classes at the Hindu Spiritual Care Institute. The Indian society is a very self-organizing, semi-chaotic type of society where there is no structure that is apparent from the outside, but within it there is internal logic which makes sense. And today I'm trying to call out that internal logic. But the interesting thing here is that the center of community in the Western society is used to be the Friday, Saturday, Sunday mosque, uh, synagogue, and church situation. So that's where the community is. That's where my people are. That's where I can also go for private conversations, maybe a confessional type thing, or for help from the community, because that's where my people are. I hang out with these people, irrespective of social class. And that's the model that's worked, I mean, I'm obviously oversimplifying, but that's the model that's been working quite well for thousands of years. The Indian model, the Hindu model, but Indian model in general, is a more distributed model where you have different ways of addressing problems. So if you have a problem where you're questioning the meaning of life and purpose, well, there's one type of people you go to. You have something to deal with, something that's weighing heavily on your mind, somebody else you can go to, and so on and so forth. And so these are two distinctly unique, different ways of solving it. And the Hindu tradition solves those problems in very different ways. And that's what I'm trying to get to in today's talk. Okay, so when the people in the lands of India, and possibly before that, from wherever they might have arrived, see, cultural memories uh, date back into before we had memories, before we can remember we had those memories. And you can sense that because if you look at establishing patterns, some patterns you can establish in 1 month, 1 year, 10 years, but some patterns take thousands of years to establish. We might think that the internet just came up today, but internet couldn't just have come up today. It needed progress in electronics, progress in mathematics, progress in computational sort of algorithmic thinking, progress in material science itself, silicon science, and so on and so forth. There are so many different factors that needed to come together for something to work. And so when you look at all these ideas that I'm about to discuss, you have to recognize that they didn't just come out in a vacuum. There is a cultural system that would have gone through long period of cogitation to even sense that there is some sort of connection, then to gather the data over many generations of human beings, then to correlate the data, and then to come out with rules of thumb to answer that question: how do I make sense of the world? So this isn't something you wake up one day. We are talking in English, and clearly we are not negotiating the language as we are speaking. These words predate our conversation, evidently. And this predation must go back in time, which is why languages over long periods of time continue to remain the same, because they are transmitted from generation to generation. And even as they spread apart, they take time to spread apart into separate languages, from idioms to dialects to to all out languages, but the family resemblance still remains. So all of this to say there's a long period of time in which we've come to this understanding. So what happens if something is happening that's outside of my control, which is what we said was situational or superhuman. So if you're looking at society now, for example, you might look at so many things that are going on that we have no control over. Who gets to sit in the White House? We have individually very little control over that. What kind of technological innovations are happening in the world? Very little say that we have into it. How societies are developing, whether there are riots or wars in a particular place, we really have not much say over those. So how do you respond to things that you have no control over? And that's where we've come back, and now I'm describing a Hindu kit of tools, and the idea of a kit of tools being that it's no longer just one kit, kit with one item, which is like, I'm here to talk to you, tell me what's going on. We have a lot of different ways of approaching this problem and solving for that individual condition, for that individual person. And so it adds to the richness of conversation that we have with them. So when something situational or superhuman happens, we naturally turn to astrology. And astrology is obviously, in modern days, it's considered to be superstitious, and it's clearly considered to be something that's pop culture, but serious people don't pay any attention to it. But I'd like to offer that astrology and its advantages are more than what meets the eye. For one, the entire preamble I had about societies and how they think, it applies very directly to this. To observe very clearly the movement of the stars and the planets, and to note them day after day, night after night, year after year, decades after decades, to know the cycle of Jupiter around the heavens, you need to be keeping data for 60 years or 120 years to know what the cycle is. To look at predicting an eclipse, again, you need to have data over hundreds or thousands of years. You can't just wake up one day and say, okay, and here I give to you astrology. That's not how things work. And so when you look at astrology, you have to first recognize that we are sensing that there is a pattern in nature. And we're trying to understand what is the source of that pattern. And looking into the heavens is a natural conclusion from that, because one, what else is there to do in the night? The night sky is clear, very bright, and you can see the stars. They move through the night, and from night to night, season to season, year to year, they are doing some movement. All of that data is being tracked. And so think about civilizationally the amount of continuity you have to have log tables with continuous data, and to have the wealth to actually take out time to do that sort of thing, right? Because you're taking time out. Some otherwise useful people are just staring at the star and making notations, right? For hundreds of years, thousands of years, the data is being gathered. And it's being gathered because, of course, in every other culture you can see, they are directly trying to correlate what's happening above with what's happening inside. Now, and you may agree or disagree with whether astrology works for you or not. The Indian astrology system is very intricate, very detailed, and requires a lot of data and a lot of mathematics. It is not something that's done trivially. But when we look at astrology, we're also saying that there is an existence of patterns that exist, right, outside of our control. If you look at what Jupiter represents or what Mars represents, you may think of it as causation, which is how the Indian system makes it out to be, which is Mars is sitting here and this is impacting your life in this manner. But you can also think of it as correlation, which is people have been gathering data on the internal condition and what's happening in the heavens for thousands of years, and they put two and two together. And they said, when this happens, this other thing happens, and so on and so forth. And then deduced a set of mathematical rules. Whether you agree with those rules or not is not what my argument here is. People turn to astrology because it does several things. It allows people to one, look at their problems objectively. Why is this happening to me is a question that you can answer by saying there's something wrong with me because something wrong is happening. Or you can say there's something wrong with the time we're in, right? I'm in whatever my situation is. And by externalizing the problem, I can try to solve it. I can one resolve myself to, well, this is what's happening. And what do I need to do? So it allows me to add an extra variable, eliminate myself from the equation, and then solve the equation. And this allows you to have very confidential conversations with people that they would never be able to talk about unless they were able to externalize their problems. The, the conventional Western method, devoid of this tool, is to say, let's talk about it. Let's talk more and more about it. But how are you going to solve for something that someone didn't cause, right? You can't talk it out of people. Astrology allows you to externalize it. Now, this is important for reasons I just described, but also it allows you to see patterns and recognize patterns. And that's the first thing that I began this entire conversation with. Understanding that life is not a straight line. Things go up and down. Things go in sinusoidal format or some other format. Whatever goes up comes down, whatever your metaphor is. But there are patterns in life. Bad things are happening now. And the corollary to that is good things will also happen at some point in the future. You're now able to develop a deeper appreciation of the variability and vicissitudes that are included in this package of time, right? You're no longer, if bad things are happening to me, am I a bad person or I'm just a person having a bad time? And if it's the latter, then you can say, okay, let's find out how to get to the bright side. What can I do right now? Another part of this is to recognize the pattern. When you look at, for example, you look at what happens in fall, when the leaves fall down and the plants seem bare. And one might think, well, it's not doing any useful, productive thing, so you may as well chop it off. Because what the heck is it doing there, sitting there, right? But that's not how nature works. In fall, the roots are growing. And the roots allows, the growing of the roots allows the plant to go deeper, to have better, more strength, more viability when the next good season comes around. So the ability to lose a part of one's life and to regrow that part of life, the ability to create that perspective is the gift of astrology. You've opened a conversation, you've externalized the problem, you've understood the patterns of nature, and you understand that what may be down is not necessarily down. It's only a preparation for the next up cycle. This reframing allows people to handle, to now separate themselves from the problem and feel that, okay, I'll survive. I'll give you a unexpected example, and this is the great American philosopher and pugilist Mike Tyson said this when he was jailed for 3 years. that he said he was jailed, and of course he was on a high. He was hyped up when he was a fighter earlier, and then he went to jail, and all hell broke loose, so to speak. And he realized that once he recognized that these 3 years, this is what he's doing, this is his life. Once he reconciled himself to it, he comes out and he says, those were the best 3 years of my life because I had surrendered to what was going on. And that's important as well, because now you're no longer holding back energy, no longer walking around with tight muscles. You've externalized the problem and now you've surrendered. And now it allows you to be more supple, more nimble, more responsive to come out with. And so astrology also has a few corollary crafts that are associated. One is the association of gems and the sort of harnessing of nature's energies. And again, you may or may not believe it, but if you think coffee gives you a buzz, coffee doesn't give you a buzz while you're drinking it. And if you have the right amount of coffee, you shouldn't have like shaky hands, right? You just feel the power of coffee. And then culturally, you were told that if I don't have coffee, I haven't woken up. Gems and jewelry work the same way. And again, I may be preaching to the choir, so to speak here, but I've personally had this experience where I'm a skeptical, cynical kind of guy, but there are some kind of gems that if you hold them in your hand, you feel them pulsate in your hand, in your heart, and other people can see it. And that was a very surprising experience for me. So this stuff is real. Now, whether it works for you or not, well, your mileage may vary. The other is the creation of yantras. Yantras are geometric devices. They are typically sacred, and they harness the power energies of the universe toward whatever goal that you're requesting those sacred energies to help you with. And yantras are often deployed as well. So you may have seen the Sri yantra. There are so many other yantras that associate. And so astrology, a lot of the recommendations that come out might be, well, buy this gem jewelry, do this kind of charity, buy this yantra, do this havan, pujan. All of these things are ways to recognize those universal energies and to respect and honor them and seek some sort of balance, some sort of harmony out of those. So superhuman and situational things, our first response is astrology. The second response is the vast collection of stories that we have as part of the Hindu tradition. Puranas. Puranas means old, but Puran also refers to stories about the original being, God himself or herself. And these are often very interesting, very colorful, very dramatic stories of trials and tribulations of heroes. And these are amazing because a lot of times when people have bad things happen to them, they are told they should chant Sundarkand, for example, or they should chant at someone's death, they should chant or have recited Garud Puran. These are stories that allow us to reframe. It's if you've ever watched one of those kung fu movies and you see Bruce Lee or what have you doing their thing, um, do you not? Is it not the case that you identify with the protagonist and you feel their power and their aggression and their pain and their success? You feel all of that happening through you, even though it's happening on the screen in front of you. We become our heroes who we idealize, we become those. And in modern culture, we're devoid of heroes. And that's why we have to make up comic book heroes to look up to, because everybody else we look up to turns out to be a fake, right? Eventually something, comes out about them. And that's why, imaginary interplanetary heroes are invented in modern culture. In the Puranas are amazing stories of this, the sort of trials that people have been to. You look at Odysseus and whatever his stories were as well, similar. The thing is, the cycle of stories, as Joseph Campbell's, the hero's journey arc. If someone is on a down cycle, they should recognize that, well, they're not the first person on the planet to be on a down cycle. And the down cycle is often the beginning of an amazing up cycle. What happened with Steve Jobs when he was kicked out of Apple at a very young age, and then he comes back in his second coming, temporarily initially, and then eventually comes out to create the most successful company for the next couple of decades, is an amazing hero's journey. And so we have the Puranas to go to. It allows us to reframe our story. It allows us to look up to heroes and invoke their power, invoke their strength and courage and open-heartedness, which is a sort of yogic phenomenon of the chakras, right? The heart is narrowed when we are fearful, when we are disconnected, when we are when we are burnt out. And this narrowing of the heart or the forming of plaque around the heart then reduces the flow of joy juice, of enjoyment of any type. And these stories allow us to widen the heart. In English, you would say this is a very broad-hearted or a lion-hearted person. That's the same idea, which is those heroes that virya us, this sense of heroism opens our heart as well. And it allows us to then engage with the world better. It has a spiritual and a physical transformation if done correctly. For this, however, it's the same with your sports team. And again, I may be going too slow, so I'm going faster. But it's the same with your sports team, where if you don't invest yourself in the team, the outcome doesn't matter. So you have to invest yourself into these stories and those heroes for these stories to actually bring sense. Puja and Havan, we already talked about. The philosophy of karma is a very strong support, where why are things happening to me can be answered in a way that says these are happening to me because there is an ironclad rule of karma. Now, why is that important? At the moment of birth, the society in which I am born in, the family in which I am born in, the economic conditions in which I am born in, the presence of opportunities in the society I was born in, a lot of those are already baked in at the time of birth. And so, if those are random, hypothetically, then 90% of the facts of life are random. And then the question is, why am I trying to optimize with my actions the remaining 10%? And that's a very pessimistic view of life, right? But why do good things happen to bad people, right? And the thing is, you have to say there has to be some sense. You have to. So in the Hindu tradition, we of course recognize karma and reincarnation as a twofer, where obviously good things are happening to bad people, but it's going to get you next time around. You have to believe in the law of karma, because then it allows us to have a sense of trust in the calculus of the universe. That the universe, the arc of, as Martin Luther King said, right? The arc of the universe bends towards justice. The arc of the universe is a positive arc. Knowing that is important. Whether you can compute and verify karma, good luck with that. That's not the point of this. It is to understand that you can have faith in the calculus. That allows you to not worry about how the world is working and if the world is out to get me. That's a very important distinction that I want to make. As someone who teaches karma, I have no way of verifying if it is true or not. I only have the word of my preceptors and their preceptors and so on. But having an unalterable trust in the law of karma allows me to then stop trying to run the universe on behalf of whatever energies are working the universe. You assume that it will take care of itself, and it's fair and fine as it is, and I do my thing. And so what can we do? What can we do is we can do good things now. We can serve other people. We can donate. We can be kind to other people, because again, it catches up, because that's how the math works. And so karma allows us to philosophically understand and respond to it. And through this giving, through this serving, create this positive cycle where through an act of charity, both people are gaining. The person receiving, of course, but the person giving also feels a sense of connection and joy and purpose and meaning that they lacked previously. So all that comes from karma. Community support is the fifth pivot. So I've talked about astrology, Puranas, Puja, Havan, karma, philosophy, and of course, community support. So community temple treasuries are notoriously wealthy. They have gold and silver in those treasuries, and this is true for Hindu society at large. And that's why when there was some pushback in modern India as we speak this year, why is there a large temple being constructed in North India after 500 years of it being broken down? The answer is it isn't. It is of course a matter of principle. It's a matter of belief. But temples are amazing. Like they say, there's a black hole at the center of every galaxy. It allows the commerce to progress. It allows for goodness to happen, because it's like a bank. You bank your good days, and it helps you get over your bad days. So when there's a drought, the temple would run dry. When there's flooding, the temple would open up their coffers. They're on food drive. So it allows the society to buffer for between good days and bad days. So and now I've covered the situational or superhuman items. Now we come to okay, so Satyaji says, the concept of karma gives me hope because it's empowering. I know that my good deeds are going to help me one day, and I take comfort in that belief. And so I agree with you, Satyaji, that it allows me to feel that I have some agency. I'm not just a hopeless, hapless pawn in this game of the universe. I have agency, and my agency is I can do what I can do, and let me do it, because it's not good enough being a victim of whatever universal problems are happening. All right. So this is on the outside front, when things are beyond our control. In the physical body, of course, and to this audience may not be that new, of course, where the Hindu tradition has Ayurveda and yoga and pranayama as tools that are available to, again, try to get the body to a homeostatic balance. We understand that the body itself is a well-tuned machine. And this is, again, a recognition of patterns both outside and inside. Understanding that the body in itself is a pattern in balance. But sometimes that pattern goes out of balance. And therefore, restoring that sense of balance is the job of course, the postural yoga, pranayama, and Ayurveda, which is energies, the physical body itself, and of course the balance, dynamic balance of energies. And this is important because again, in the West, these are overlooked because we think that balance comes from a medicine, from a pill. And that is not the case, because balance does not come from, the body is designed to be balanced. And anything that's outside of this range of balance needs to be restored. I'll give you an example and then I'll move on, because obviously this is a topic this group understands. But until 15 years ago, I read this article in a now defunct magazine called Pacific Standard, which talked about the gut microbiome. And now, of course, everyone knows about everything about the gut microbiome. But the thing was, what was shocking was that as recent as 15 years ago, scientists did not think of the gut microbiota, or the bacteria in the skin or the lungs, to be an important thing. These were bugs that needed to be nuked out through antibiotics. The Indian tradition does not have a situation of enmity with our microbiome. We may not think of them as bacteria, but we know them in other ways. We know them as biles and humors. But the point is still the same, that the cell matter inside us is a part of our ecosystem. And we must recognize and respect those. And our diet, bringing balance to bringing balance to our lifestyle, allows us to harmonize all these things and all these energies. And so Ayurveda, yoga, and pranayama are ways to restore this physical sense of comfort and self. Now we come to, of course, something that this team, of course, cares about a lot, which is adhyatmic or spiritual distress, which might be, the body, mind, and spirit, psychosomatic, and so on, and a cure for suffering. And a lot of modern diseases are essentially fall into this category. They're not caused by bacteria. They're just caused by a disbalance somewhere in the more abstract realms, but it shows up in the body. Loneliness, they say, is like smoking 15 cigarettes a day, right? This lack of connection and apathy is a problem. Now, it's not caused by physical issues. You can talk to friends everywhere. It's caused by something inside us, right? But it has physical implications, of course. And so these are linked. And there's a deep recognition of that within the Hindu tradition as well. And again, I don't say that the Hindu tradition is exclusive in this. I'm just describing a system that is internally consistent. For example, when I say Ayurveda, you might argue, is not religious. But my question is, what is religious in which case? Understanding that there are patterns of dynamic balance inside and outside is our macrocosmic view as well as microcosmic view. We don't make a distinction. And so, of course, it is religious because it shows the same framework for understanding the world, whether it's outside or inside. So coming back to body, mind, and spirit related issues, there are four things that I'd like to call out here. The first one, of course, this group understands is connection. We are a social species, and by social species, I mean that we are if you look at ants, ants are not an individual species. An individual ant is no ant. An ant is a collective because its entire hive acts as one species. It's a superorganism, as they say. We might think we're different, but that is not the case. We are not an individual organism. No, as they say, no man is an island. We are a social species because our biology defines it. If we were an individual species, we wouldn't have survived in the wild at all. We're designed for communication. We're designed for collaboration. We're designed with bites of the eye so we can coordinate the hunts. The arcade of our teeth is designed in a way that we can digest certain kind of food. The sitting around the fire and cooking and telling stories, it's baked into our design, our success as a species. All this to say that connection is not an afterthought. It is not a nice to have. It is a necessary ingredient for existing. And because it is lacking, is why a lot of the disbalance shows up everywhere else. We try to fill this gap of connection with money. We try to fill this gap of connection with power and fame. We try to fill this gap with consumption. But ultimately, they're going to be unsuccessful because they are not earth-sat's connection at all. They have nothing to do with connection, right? And so the only way to have connection is to have connection, and which is what this team does, of course, because that's our job. We are preparing to provide that human-to-human connection, and in therefore feeling like a human again. We can go back to the individual ant versus the superorganism. We are a collective species. We're not an individual. Even though I'm speaking in English and this is the idiomatically, I'm describing it in a Western construct. But you have to understand the Hindu view is by no means that individualistic at all. It requires individual agency, but it's individual agency in the context of our role in society, dharma itself. And this is important, where individual agency is emphasized in American culture, for example, but but the collective is forgotten. And that leads to this sort of distortion where we have now apartmented ourselves into this loneliness epidemic. So what are the cure for connection? Naturally, the cures for connection are, visiting people, which is what we do, or sharing food together, or just being in a collective, or dancing together, even chanting together, breathing together are all ways to feel that myself does not stop at the physical boundaries of this individual form, but myself extends into a wider community, and then I'm made whole because of that sense of connection. That's the first thing. The second is meaning, sharing experiences, also telling stories. Yes. Meaning, and this meaning is where sharing experiences even more together, where remembering together. Providing meaning is one of the three essentials of spiritual care, of course, right? Meaning, connection, and purpose. Meaning is what we're providing by just remembering together, by talking, and not trying to resolve mathematically, but entering into a sense together is what this meaning does. And meaning making, so many ways to do it: telling stories, sharing experiences, just recalling events, or just looking at something together is all meaning making. The third thing here is rituals, where in the Hindu tradition, and of course, I know the Jewish tradition is very ritual oriented. In fact, rituals are a very important part of the law, right? Hindu tradition likewise has a lot of rituals, but there are less rules, more rules of thumb. And the difference here is that you don't fall off the wagon because you're not doing the law, but it helps to know what the rituals are. But rituals have a more interesting place, I feel, than we typically pay attention to. A lot of people, even in India, especially Western educated, the more Anglophone we became, the more we sort of thought that this ritual BS is nothing. I don't believe in it. I meet people all the time. Oh, I don't believe in rituals. I'm Hindu, but I don't do this ritual stuff. They fail to actually understand the true genius of rituals. Rituals are a way, as this philosopher Byung-Chul Han says, rituals are a temporal technology. Rituals allow us to travel over time, to create things over long distance. If you don't, I also, for example, I don't celebrate birthdays because I think, well, a birthday is just a day like any other. But an absence of time markers then does not allow me to progress because I don't know if I'm moving forward or backward. having rituals organizes us. I'll tell you my rituals. In the morning, I have to now wake up and offer water to the sun. But the sun has to be at an angle above a certain height. Why is that important? It turns out there are so many ways to think about it. One, it shapes my lifestyle. I have to sleep in time to wake up in time for the sun to be at a certain angle or before. So it shapes my lifestyle. It shapes my time, of course, because I have to, now that I've woken up early, I have the rest of my morning. It also synchronizes my body clock with the universal clock, because that's what the superchiasmic nucleus is doing by looking at the sun and so on. It's resetting the melatonin cycle, right? And so rituals are extremely important because they allow us to live in time. They allow us to organize ourselves in time. Rituals allow us to make meaning and sense and purpose because we let down markers upon which to travel over time and progress. So rituals are very important, and I've come to recognize the importance of ritual doubly so because of this. That they allow us to live. And by the way, so the process of repetition. This is another thing that people. Paradox, I'm shocked that people are shocked at this, which is they say that creative people are just creative all the day, they're just wide-eyed crazy people, right? But I think of myself as a creative person. Every creative person that I've read about and known is highly disciplined. Why? Because your craft requires discipline. Your craft requires time. It isn't that genius will come to you at any time. Genius will come to you when you work hard for it. You have to organize yourself in that manner. And so rituals are very important for that. They allow us also to return to the same place and resume work. These are all things that rituals do. Similar to that, of course, there are, of course, group rituals. Kirtan chanting, I want to call out here because Kirtan chanting is an amazingly beautiful ritual. I'm sure all of us have participated in it. But just the fact that we're singing together allows us to coordinate our heart, not just the physical heartbeat, but our heart's period, our sense of self. And we feel whole, we feel complete. And it allows us to move away from the whatever little problem that we've been having. So rituals are very important to all this to say. All right. And then finally we come to philosophy. So when it comes to even for body, mind, and spirit problems, philosophy is very important. Chanting is important. The recitation of sacred scripture is important. Sundarkand I've talked about. Satyanarayan Katha every full moon. Garud Puran upon death. These are all ways to remind ourselves of this deep and sacred philosophy, some of which is embedded fruit-like. And I'm going to end with this final example. When I describe and introduce Hinduism to people, I say that, there's strawberry, where the seeds of the strawberry, the fruit are outside, and then there's the mango, where the sweet fleshy part is outside and the seed is inside, right? And Hindu tradition often is more mango-like, where the deep philosophical import of the deep knowledge that we have, it's deeply embedded inside some very sweet, fleshy, very interesting story. And that story you can consume for itself. But eventually those seeds that you take into your mind will blossom into their own tree. They will come out in the form of a philosophical articulation or a reframing of the personal narrative, which is what is the gift, the prasad of this entire process. So there are so many philosophical tools that are followed as well. So to sum up, the threefold afflictions are those that are created by things outside our control, things that are in the physical body, and things that are unseen but very deeply felt, which are inside. And for each of these, the Hindu kit of tools is very wide and it's very deep and rich. And these are interconnected. We may not think of them as religion, but they are a connected whole that makes this entire religion what it is. So with that, I thank you, and I apologize for running too far into the beginning and having to rush through the end, but I hope that it gives us help. So thank you, and I'll take maybe one or two questions if you have any. and any feedback or narratives. You can unmute. Kilaji, yes.
Yes. No, I just enjoyed your the nice talk, and I think it's shaping because you created it recently, and this is your second rendition, and it's going to get better. I think we really have a very wide and rich kit of tools, like you said, and it is good for people to appreciate them as spiritual care providers, and not that you all have to subscribe to them. That's, I think, a very important point. Astrology being a good example. The fact is, astrology for the service receiver means something. You, as a provider, have to recognize and respect that, and do your best to give them the right reference. Or if you don't have it, that's okay. But to say, oh, okay, yes, I will try to find you an astrologer who you can talk to, that I have in my directory of references, and so on and so forth. So that's also a very kind of a good takeaway.
Yeah, I'm reminded of this amazing Ira Glass episode of This American Life, where or either that or it might be 99, no, sorry, whatever, in a radio lab. But anyway, it was a podcast, and it was about reading the tea leaves in some Turkish culture. And the thing is, it was another form of divination. The important thing about that isn't the reading of the tea leaf. It's the ability to have that conversation and to say things that you couldn't otherwise say. Right? For example, which is why, you have talk to Wilson the Hat, right? You are allowing the possibility of a conversation that cannot otherwise be had. And that, I think, is the gift, which is an important thing. Satyaji, your hand is up.
So when you were talking about astrology and rituals, about the yantras, this thought crossed my mind. In Ayurveda, they talk about different kinds of chikitsas for different ailments, different branches of medicine, and one of them is called Daiva Vyapasriya Chikitsa. That specifically deals with finding out if the person's karma is the one that is causing the ailment. The Daivagya or the Ayurveda Vaidya will address the correction of that part of karma to remove that as an obstruction towards the healing. So the Ayurveda Vaidya will be doing the traditional Ayurvedic healing with medicines and Shamana and Prashamana and everything, Shodhana and everything. But in addition to that, they actually do the mantra japas, different kinds of homas, prayaschittas, all these things on behalf of the person who's receiving the treatment, to actually address that. So it was pretty interesting, right? So it is actually codified in Ayurveda texts how that is done.
Yes, very much so. A few years ago, this was a joke because, the usual cultural debates that are going on. So ITBHU had a department for Bhuta Vidya, right? And so it was translated naturally by BBC as ghost science. And so people made fun of it. But that obviously is not what Bhuta Vidya is, right? So the science of living beings and is Bhuta Vidya. So anyway, the point is people misunderstand all of this stuff. But Kailash, you were saying something.
There's a very this is a practice in Japan. I used to travel quite a bit. They have a room. You can close the room and you can cry your heart out. You can shout out. You can whatever you want to do. To me, that is a very strong spiritual care.
Yeah.
Because something is getting over me. I want to get rid of it. Okay, and that needs a privacy. That needs a respect for my being able to do that. People, before they call me insane, I just quietly go there and do it and come out. So to me, those are what are the human expectations? What are the human beliefs and practices that as practitioners we have to sort of be non-judgmental and make sure that we are not coming in the way.
Yeah.
Or converting people thinking, hey, no, why don't you do this instead? But I think that is a sensitivity. But yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's nice, Kailash ji. So it was like a soundproof room.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very big, it's a very essential part of any a place where Japanese congregate, either living or working or what have you. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, this the ability to have tears is an important way of eliminating toxins, especially the lightening of the heart, as they say, right? I've cried and now I feel lighter, and so the problem is, of course, many cultures, extra macho ones, they don't want you to express yourself, but then that poison stays within. But in the Hindu tradition, if you go to a kirtan or you go to one of these stories, uh, it is a very cathartic experience. You will see people dancing with tears in their eyes. I've personally had that experience. This is way back 30 years ago now. My gosh. I was sitting in my MBA dorm, and 4 doors down, somebody was playing something on their little tiny black and white TV. And it was a devotional song from my childhood. And for reasons I cannot explain even now, I just started crying my heart out. And that experience, the Sufi thing, that experience I've continued to have. There are some songs that are so close to my heart that I would cry, and it would completely lighten my load. And you can cry in your car while driving on your commute, which is what I used to do a lot. The point is, it's a very therapeutic thing to do, and the absence of which I keep the poisons in, and it lets it poison me. Why would I do that?
That's my favorite way of
Yes.
lightening myself. I have a playlist of songs that are associated with particular events, and that just solves a lot of my problems, just the music.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, that reminds me
Gauravji,
of sorry. I was saying,
have
it reminds me of
one
another Latin phrase that I've noted down in my diary for many, I think 2 decades. Solvitur ambulando, which is, it is solved by walking, right? So many things that you can just solve by walking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Satyaji, you had a comment, right? Yeah. Yes, similar to that, Satyaji, yes. All right, sorry, Vishaji was saying something. I apologize.
I have a question. Like you were saying, many of the rituals, people will usually say, and I do the same, that I don't believe in rituals because many of those things I don't understand what they are for, what they mean, because my Sanskrit is very poor. So if I don't understand anything, I don't like to perform it. So do you have any solution for that?
Yeah. It's the same as my understanding of American football, which is I have no understanding of it. So I can't enjoy Super Bowl. The thing is, a lot of times the meaning is, and we always, because I'm an engineer MBA type, so obviously I'm looking for the intellectual meaning. There must be some correlate, but a lot of times the meaning is the doing, the connection, as Satyaji was writing, the connection to my ancients. For example, I've started doing the Tarpan, right? By just recognizing my connectivity as a chain of being, a chain of universal energies, it allows me to recognize that I have a role to play. And that role to play is I'm representing all those that came before me, all the energies that made me possible. And so it releases me and empowers me simultaneously. But you only arrive at that by doing. You never arrive at it. You never arrive at it before doing. I feel, because it's the same as enjoying a dance. There's no intellectual way to enjoy a dance. You just got to do it. So that's how I've landed on that right now, which is some stuff you just have to go and experience, and then understand what it means.
So I can share one personal one also. I think I may have done it before, but for me, my meditation in the morning usually includes my sitting down, meditating, and closing my eyes, and then my mind's eye, I invite everyone who influenced me as a human being in my lifetime, and whose memories I cherish and who have been meaningful to me, teachers, parents, lineage, siblings, all the people. And I sit with them and I thank them. And they all come always with a smile. None of these people have come to me with a grumpy face. And it also sharpens my own acceptance of mortality and respect for life. and the value of life. So I find that to be a very good spiritual practice, my own spiritual practice. And I proudly share that with people that I talk to, that I know. And it is one of my best things I do in the morning to begin my days. So I think it all depends on your own body-mind connection and your belief system, all the things that you have individually. And for providers to recognize and respect this amazing tapestry of practices and the processes is a very rich experience just to know about them.
I actually am reminded of this joke we used to laugh at in the 1980s. It's a Punjabi joke. But this mother is complaining to her neighbor that my son is very naughty. He keeps eating his nails.
Mhm.
Very naughty kid. He keeps eating his nails. So the other mother says, well, you should just buy him loose shorts. Because he's going to hold on to his pants, right? So he can't eat his.
That's correct.
Well,
No
a lot
time
of
for
times the
this.
rituals are doing that work. They're preventing us from, doing the negative things
That's right.
by giving us something positive to do.
Yeah, yeah. There's a
Gauravji,
lot
this
of
was Gauravji, this was an absolute masterclass, and I'm so grateful for your time and your expertise. Something that I took away from it was the focus on astrology. My param guru was an astrologer, but I've found it difficult to incorporate that into my spiritual care practice when working with others, because there is a different type of weight that's carried in astrology in the West.
Yes.
I love the way that you framed it as the ability to externalize, to be able to then say things that wouldn't necessarily be able to be said personally, but if we remove it from ourselves, it gives us the space and the container to be able to hold it. So I'm grateful for that, and for all the concepts that you discussed today. We're about out of time. I wanted to be cognizant of our schedule here. Could I turn it back over to you for some closing words?
Thank you for inviting me, Zachary. This is a topic that I think we are going to work together on and develop, but I'm very excited by it because it enhances and enriches the kit of tools that we have and the approaches one might have, and create a more meaningful conversation with people that we work with. So I thank you for this opportunity and for patiently listening to me.
Thank you, Gauravji. Can I
Thank you
just
so
ask,
much.
on the question of astrology, we have some astrologers that we can refer people to that are.
Yes. So there's so Saurabh, he runs a website, jyotish.org, and there's a lot of people you can look up. It's a whole jyotish.org, and they
Are they part of our official referral
no,
program?
they're not yet. We haven't really rostered them yet, but we should at some point. Yeah.
Okay. And if I can just suggest when and if you give this talk again, if I can speak up for Sanskrit, because I really feel it's a very important part of the tradition. Not that you can't practice Hinduism without knowing it, but like being very clear with those three terms. I don't think you said Adibautika.
I did not. I because I was trying to explain that. So it's
Yeah.
okay. So anyway, I did not because usually when I would have a slide, I would have that, and I talked to that. And this is based on, as of today afternoon, Kailashji said, well, focus on the thing. Don't belabor the Sanskrit word.
Yeah, but it's important for those of us as providers that we hear those terms again and again and again until they sink
until you
in
internalize it.
and what they mean. Yeah.
Yes.
As a lover of Sanskrit, sorry.
Affirmative. I agree with that. Yeah.
I have one suggestion for Zachary. I think our time for updates today did not happen. I recommend that we have people I like to tell you about tally and maybe put in your own minutes. Some way we should at least get a tally of the people, the 4 or 5 people, primary people, and see how the HCRC is looking.
Yeah.
So that is just a